I'm very grateful that the Archbishop and the Committee for Continuing Education of Clergy here in Melbourne have invited me this year to be the keynote speaker for their in-service days. I have enormous admiration for the clergy of Melbourne. I've been honoured to work in the diocese for 15 years and off and on over my Jesuit life, and I've always had great admiration for the priests, religious and diocesan, who make up the ordained ministry of the Melbourne Church. I've been asked to speak to how do we have hope and joy when we're in tough times. The whole church in Australia and indeed in the world are in tough times. We've got the rise of secularism. We have obviously the sexual abuse of people by clergy and the victims and survivors whom we want to support and want to heal as best we possibly can. We have young people who are not attending as strongly as we'd like. We have to reach out as marvellously and wonderfully with the good news as we can. And so over these days we're going to look at what practical and wonderful moments can we now embrace again with renewed hope, with renewed vigour to be able to proclaim the gospel in the here and now. There are going to be 4 sessions over the next few days. The first session is called On Mission with Christ. We're not called, most of us, to be missionaries overseas. We're called to be on mission to Australia. So this session's going to have a look at what does it mean to go to Australia right now? More still, what does it mean to have Australia coming to us? Especially, say, at weddings, baptisms, funerals, at Christmas, when if people are going to come to church, they come then. And we get a variety of people who come with a variety of expectations and hopes. Well, how well do we know that community and what are we offering it? And in that second part, I want to particularly pick up Pope Francis's great challenge about mission in the church right now. Obedience, humility, care for the earth, gratitude, forgiveness, love. And we'll be reflecting on how they should be shaping our ministry and our mission. The second session is going to pick up the big challenge the Pope and the Synod of Bishops provides for the entire Church this October in the Synod on young people, and especially on young people and vocational discernment. And I've called this, Will Our Faith Have Young People? That's not a grammatical error. I think our young people will have faith, some form of spirituality, but I wonder whether they're going to find a home in the church. So will our faith have young people? And I particularly want to pick up a survey done for the Synod of young people about what gives them hope and what enables them to participate in the life of the church, and conversely, what in fact distances from the life of the church. I also want to have a look at the recent survey, the census of Australia, and where religion plays a role and how it plays a role in Australia. And then pick up from there, what are the issues that emerge from that are very clear and real for every parish in Australia, every priest, every deacon, every bishop in Australia, and indeed all lay people. The third session, I want to be particularly Ignatian. Pope Francis, our wonderful present Holy Father, has given the Church a lot of Ignatian spirituality. Well, we're going to do some here too, and have a look at discernment. If priests and deacons and bishops are anything, they're meant to be the discerner of the local Christian community, the local parish. How do they read the signs of the time in the light of the gospel? How do they respond to the promptings of the Holy Spirit? And what very practical steps can we have as we in fact try to discern where God is calling all of us to live more faith, more hope, and more love? So that's going to be very practical indeed. And then the final session is arguably the most important one. That's going to be what are we doing on earth when the going gets tough? How do we walk with people when the going is really difficult? And I wrote a book a few years ago called Where the Hell is God, reflecting on a very personal family story of suffering and pain, and how I found my own faith was able to sustain me through some very dark days. So I want to share with my brother priests both my own experience, but also what was said to me at the time by priests and religious and others that wasn't helpful, and also for us to reflect together about how our own Catholic tradition can enable all of us to be able to walk with people in the shadow of death and the valley of tears. Because one of the great moments is when even people who may not be very religious or very spiritual, when they do turn to those questions, is when they're in a crisis, when the going is very difficult indeed. And we have to be there again, as the Holy Father has reminded us, being the face of Christ's compassion and having words of comfort and indeed words that sustain hope even in the darkest times. I'm here to learn as much as I'm here to give input. So I know that over these days, the meals, the breaks, the wonderful storytelling, the sharing of experience will enliven my faith. And I know that I'm going to leave these days with my brother priests and deacons and the bishops more enlivened and, please God, richer for the experience of having been here to animate them to be back on mission with Christ.